Namaste and greetings from the Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Welcome to the Staff Development Program for Capacity Building being conducted under the MOU between the Government of Guyana and the Indira Gandhi National Open University. This video is a part of the STP on learner support and academic counseling. My name is Dr. Anita Priyadarshini. I am Associate Professor at the Staff Training and Research Institute of Distance Education. This STP focuses on the area of learner support services, which are an integral part of any open and distance learning system. As you are aware, in an open and distance learning system, the learner and the teacher are at a geographical distance from each other, and in fact, support services are required. These learners may also be studying in different time zones. The specialized area of learner support services is required to facilitate the learner in his or her learning process. These support services could be in the form of organizing academic counseling or tutorials in a face-to-face mode or in an online mode, or providing course materials and other resource books, or assisting in assignment preparation, submission, as well as providing feedback through tutor comments. This entire area of learning support services facilitates the learning, providing academic, administrative, as well as a very important psychological support to the distance learner. This ensures that they do not feel isolated or anxious because they are studying without the physical presence of a teacher and of peers in the classroom. This is why learner support services are very, very essential for a successful open and distance learning experience. The topic for this session is of distance learners and their characteristics. The aim of the session is to better understand the nature and characteristics of distance learners. The need for this understanding is because we are attempting to design a learner support system which will facilitate learning in an ODL system, and therefore, knowing our target group, that is the distance learner, knowing their expectations as well as areas where support is required to be provided would be essential for a successful ODL program. So let us begin. The major learning outcomes of this session are to explain the nature of open learning, to examine the characteristics of distance learners, to discuss the concept of self-directed learning, and to describe the role of learner support services in promoting self-directed learning. So let us first begin with the nature of open learning. In order to understand the nature of open learning, it is relevant to study the mission and vision of some open universities of the world. As you may be knowing, the Open University at Milton Keynes, UK, which was established in 1969, is recognized as one of the leading universities of the world. And this university, as you may be knowing, the Open University at Milton Keynes is established in 1969 and is recognized as one of the leading universities in the world. Its mission document states that it is, and I'm quoting, open to people, places, and ideas. This university has been set up with the aim of providing continuing education through distance learning to those who could not pursue face-to-face learning through conventional regular mode universities. Another university is that of South Africa, UNISA, which was established even earlier in 1956, and this also emphasizes that their vision and mission and values unite their diverse culture while guiding them in their decision-making and strategic planning. In India, the Indira Gandhi National Open University, which was established in 1985, has also a vision document, and that states that it is to provide access to higher education for large segments of the population, and in particular, the disadvantaged groups. The objects of IGNOU also provide for an innovative system of university-level education, which is flexible, which is open, in regard to methods, pace of learning, combination of courses, eligibility, enrollment, as well as conduct of examinations and operations of its programs. The idea is to promote learning and encourage excellence in new fields of knowledge which is so essential for ensuring that education is accessible to all. Even when we look at Guyana, you will find that the Guyana Online Academy of Learning goal also defines itself as an academy which provides flexible learning for learners, giving them increased choice, convenience, and personalization, that is, choices about when, where, and how learning occurs. So you can see that there are certain commonalities in the vision mission of statements of these universities which are run through the ODL mode. In fact, these vision missions reflect the very nature and philosophy of an open learning system. If we look at standard definitions which have been given by scholars across the times regarding open learning, according to Lewis and Spencer, and I'm quoting here, open learning is a term which is used to describe courses flexibly designed to meet individual requirements. It is often applied to provisions which try to remove barriers that prevent attendance at more traditional courses. But more importantly, it suggests a learner-centered philosophy. According to Wedmer, one of the big scholars of ODL system, open learning is a term which is used to describe various forms of teaching learning arrangements in which the teachers and learners carry out the essential tasks and responsibilities apart from one another, communicating in a variety of ways. Its purposes are to provide learners with opportunities to continue learning in their own environments and developing the capacity to carry on self-directed learning. We will also talk about self-directed learning at length a little later. Pereton defines open learning as an organized educational activity based on the use of teaching materials in which constraints of study are minimized, either in terms of access or in time or place, pace, methods of study, or any combination of all these. So you can see that there are commonalities in the definitions of open learning, and these commonalities have come across as main features of an open learning system. Let us look at what are the main features of an open learning system. First and foremost, the issue of no upper age limit. There is also the requirement of flexibility in various formats, whether it is qualification, whether it is programs, whether it is choice of subjects. There is flexibility in all formats of the system. Another aspect of ODL of the openness is that it is open with regard to place and time of studies. Yet another one is in terms of selection of courses. The choice is with the learner. There is a freedom within the learner to choose the kind of subjects that they would like to study. The open learning system also provides the benefit to learners of credit accumulation, self-paced examination system. This means that you can study and you can take examinations as and when you are prepared to take the examination. In fact, this is based on the concept of mastery of learning, where learners can take an evaluation only when they feel that they have mastered that area of study. The most important feature of ODL systems is that it promotes and uses educational technologies and ICTs. The use of multimedia, the use of online learning is also a very important part of the open learning and distance education system. Having covered the flexibilities and the various features of open learning, let us now look at the characteristics of distance learners. The most significant aspect of the distance learner profile is that of diversity. The ODL learner community has a heterogeneous nature. Unlike a formal education face-to-face class, where the learners would belong to the same geographical locations, probably have the same educational backgrounds, there is in ODL systems diversity in all aspects. It is seen that distance learners in higher education institutions are adults, and often a minimum age is prescribed. For instance, in the Indira Gandhi National Open University, in order to enroll in the university, the minimum age required is 18 years. There is, however, no upper age limit. There may be those who choose ODL system right after school, that is, they may be just about 18 years old or 19 or 20, or they may be those who have worked and are coming back to study, which could be that they may be 25, 30, 35, 40, or they could be people who have retired and who may be now seeking education just to fulfill their own lifelong learning desires. Therefore, the age profile of an ODL system for higher education may range from 18 to 80 years. In addition, when we look at the profile of learners, they could be males, females, transgenders, they could be persons who are differently abled, they could be those who belong to different social groups, marginalized groups, persons who are geographically unreached areas, minority groups, or those who have different socio-economic circumstances and would like to study through an ODL system. Such learners could also be living in urban areas, in rural areas, in semi-urban areas. As we have said already, that learners could be employed or unemployed, semi-employed in an organized or unorganized sector. They could also be engaged in self-employment. They could be working on a shift basis, a part-time basis, or such learners could also be serving in the armed forces. In fact, the IGNOU has a special division which takes care of learners who are serving in far-flung areas and from the armed forces. Many educational institutions also offer programs for those who, for one reason or the other, are serving a jail term. Therefore, the idea is to express the diversity of the learners who are there. In addition to this, the diversity also includes those who are mothers or fathers taking care of young children, homemakers, elderly persons who are seeking education for lifelong learning. It is often said that distance learners are motivated persons. They are motivated adults because they have a zeal to continue their education, which may have been halted due to one reason or the other. There are also reasons where some students might be joining because of medical reasons, because of being differently abled, because of having to be at home and under the care of medical attendants. So therefore, this group which is present in the ODL system is a very diverse and a very heterogeneous group, and it is quite different from that which you would find in a formal face-to-face classroom, which is in a formal education system. The important part is that learners in an ODL system of higher education are all adults. And therefore, when we talk of learning in adult education, the principles of adult learning have to be applicable in their teaching learning practices. When we look at adult learning, the foremost scholars who has shaped principles of adult learning is Malcolm Knowles. According to Knowles, adult learners display characteristics which are different from those of children. In fact, Knowles has contrasted andragogy, that is the art and science of helping adults to learn, with that of pedagogy, which is the art and science of helping children to learn. The characteristics displayed by adult learners include, very importantly, the idea of self-concept. That is, being sure about what they want to do or what a particular action is required to be taken. Adults move from being dependent on others to being self-dependent and independent. They display maturity in doing so. And that is why it is important to remember that adults also have a valuable resource in the form of their own experiences, self-experiences, which affect their actions and their thinking. Adults also display a readiness to learn as they are in control of their own learning. Similarly, adults have an orientation and motivation towards their own learning, and that is why learners are motivated by internal rather than external factors. All these characteristics of adults, learners, have an implication upon the design and development of educational programs. According to Malcolm Knowles, self-directed learning is a process, and I am quoting here, in which individuals take the initiative with or without the help of others. In diagnosing their learning needs, formulating learning goals, identifying human and material resources for learning, choosing and implementing appropriate learning strategies, and evaluating learning outcomes. In fact, the study of andragogy is based upon 5 assumptions of the adult learner, which impact the design and development of material, learner support services, examinations, and so on. And these are that an adult learner is one who has, firstly, an independent self-concept and who can direct his or her own learning. Secondly, has accumulated a reservoir of life experiences, that is a rich resource of learning, has a readiness to learn from which needs to be closely related to his or her changing roles, and is problem-centered and interested in immediate application of knowledge, is motivated to learn by internal rather than external factors. And based upon these 5 assumptions, Knowles developed the educational implications for learning activities of adults. According to him, as adults mature, they become more self-directed and independent. The self-directed learner, adult, is one who is able to diagnose her own learning and take initiatives. And therefore, this whole idea of self-motivation, self-management, and self-monitoring by themselves becomes a very important part of the adult learning, The ideas of self-directed learners also imply that they themselves take initiatives for learning, they are proactive and actively involved in the learning process. Therefore, when it comes to new skills, these can be learnt by learners who themselves are self-directed and are responsible for their own learning. There are also other scholars like Brockett and Hemstra, whose concept of personal responsibility oriented model, PRO, states that there are 2 basic primary orientations where self-directed learning is viewed as a process in which a learner assumes primary responsibility for planning, implementing, evaluating the learning process. Self-directed learning, according to these scholars, is referred to as a goal, which focuses on the learner's desire or preference for assuming responsibility of learning. The learning context in this case includes the demographic, organizational policy, economic issues, and so on. The role of the teacher as a guide or as a coach is also self-directing learners is also an important part of the education of adults. Other scholars like Zimmerman view self-directed learning as the degree to which learners are cognitively, motivationally, and behaviorally active participants in their own learning process. Another scholar, Albert Bandura, has formulated the model of self-directed learning, and according to him, it is a product of interactions between 3 components, which are personal attributes, which refers to the learner's motivations, which secondly, processes, which refer to the learner's autonomous learning processes. These processes include planning, monitoring, and evaluating one's learning. And thirdly, the context focuses on environmental factors which impact the level of self-direction provided to the learner. This includes both instructional design elements, support elements, as well as resources, structure, nature of the tasks of the learning context. The self-directed learner sets their own performance standards. As adults, they are able to evaluate the quality of their own performance and then, very importantly, reinforce themselves against these internal standards. In a research done by Philip Wing in 2001, he outlined the characteristics of self-directed learners. And he said again that they are those adults who are able to set their goals, to extend their knowledge and sustain their motivation. They are also able to manage their emotions well. They periodically monitor their own progress towards achievement of these goals. If they find that they are not able to achievement, then adults are able to revise their strategies, fine-tune their progress so that they are able to achieve their goals. Therefore, self-directing learning SDL is a very important part of any teaching learning process of adults. Let us now look at the area of learner support services. As we have said, learner support services are necessary because they facilitate the learning of a learner who is at a distance. It is important to understand that these characteristics of learners and adult learners play a role in the development and delivery of support services. And in turn, learner support services also help in promoting self-directed learning. The characteristics of adult learners impact learner support services and help institutions to develop these learner support services to the best benefit of the learners. While it is agreed that geographical distance between the teacher and learner are a significant factor for influencing the design and development of an ODL program, it is also a fact that issues of context, of cultures, of personal characteristics of learners all play a part in the delivery of learner support services. Therefore, when we speak of learning environment for such learners, it is necessary that such an environment be a flexible one, which is based upon the principles of open learning. The areas of flexibility would include a program curriculum design, as well as curriculum delivery and its management. The flexibility also has to be reflected in the registration period so that learners can pace their learning and there is no pressure upon them to complete the program in a specific time. For instance, when we look at courses in the Indira Gandhi Open University, we find that there are courses which offer a learning period, expanded learning period of 4 years, which means that a learner can enroll and stay within the course and complete it at any time within those 4 years. Depending on whether they are certificate programs, diploma programs, or masters or UG programs, the registration period varies. But the fact is that this flexibility is based upon the fact that some learners may need more time to complete a course due to their own personal circumstances. So therefore, this flexibility is reflected in the registration period, and it is also reflected in other ways. For instance, another important aspect is that of multiple entry and exit, which means that a learner can enroll for a course and then leave and come back into the system. This multiple entry and exits gives the learner the freedom to pace their learning and also come back to their learning once they are ready for it. This is an extremely important aspect of a flexible system. In terms of evaluation, perhaps the scheme of evaluation reflects flexibility and is most useful for learners, because here we find that there is no pressure or anxiety upon the learner to complete the course in a particular at a particular time or take an examination even when they are not ready. Therefore, in an open distance learning, there are multiple opportunities given to learners to complete the exam by appearing for an examination when they are ready to do it. For instance, in a course, the learner can appear for an examination at any point of time when they feel they are ready. And this allows every learner to study better, to not be stressed, not to be anxious, and pace out his learning or her learning completion process. There is also an important flexibility which is given, which relates to transfer of credits. They're allowing a learner to go out of the system, come back and transfer credits which have been earned earlier and banked upon and utilize them for the completion of the course. These flexibilities in the system have been added and have been preserved because they are based upon the characteristics of distance learners. The learners need these kind of flexibilities, this kind of openness, and therefore the system provides for them. Now let us come to the aspect of learner support services and how they promote self-directed learning. The most important aspect is that of helping learners to self-diagnose so that they are aware of the gap between their existing abilities and competence and the desired level of competence which they must achieve. In order to do so, the learning environment must be such that the learner is able to freely grow and develop. The academic provisions, such as those of self-learning materials, have to then be developed in a manner so that the learners are able to negotiate them according to their own pace and according to their own commitments which they may be having. And we find that many times the curriculum itself has options within it so that learners can choose options which are appropriate for their own requirements. And that is why learners can then plan their learning process, plan their goals, and fix their own goals. Even when we talk of academic counseling, which is an important part of learner support services, this counseling, which may take place at the study centers, ensures that there is a ready hand, a ready person to help the learners. These facilitators can guide learners to help achieve their learning goals. The need for providing appropriate feedback, whether it is through assignments or whether it is through counseling sessions, also helps the learners to take corrective action as and when required. The nature of activities which are inbuilt within the materials as well as conducted during the academic counseling helps learners to develop skills both in terms of their competencies as well as gaining knowledge. The use of technology as a learning tool for learners also helps them to plan their learning. And this can be another way in which learners can organize their schedules, organize their planning, and organize their study. It can also help them to monitor their learning progress. Self-directed learning is actually a self-evaluation, and this helps learners to perform better and to consolidate their learning. Teachers and counselors can then act as guides and facilitate learning. There are many other methods by which learner support services are provided to learners so that they are able to effectively take responsibility of their learning while studying in an ODL system and become more empowered and self-reliant. The entire gamut of learner support services is based upon the fact that each learner is different, each learner is diverse, and therefore they need the space and they need the freedom of choice to be able to successfully complete their learning and become lifelong learners So we see that it is the characteristics of distance learners which affect the design and development of a distance learning system. The learner support services are designed in such a way that every learner, however diverse they may be, is able to take benefit of this ODL system.